My boss took credit for my $500 million deal while I was still sitting in the room. What you're about to see, Grant Kessler announced, tapping the screen, is the result of months of strategic leadership. I watched the slide advance. No mention of who brought the client in. No mention of who negotiated the terms. Just his name, centered, bold. I leaned toward him, quiet. There's a line missing. Grant didn't turn. It's fine. Let me handle this. Across the table, someone nodded approvingly. Impressive execution. Grant accepted it with a smile. It wasn't simple. I am Marin Calloway, 46, Senior Deal Origination Director. I opened the conversation that led to this contract. I ran the numbers. I handled every revision. I stayed when everyone else left. The meeting ended. People stood. Hands were shaken. In the hallway, I caught up to him. That contract includes a 2% commission. He adjusted his cufflinks. This deal needed a single point of leadership. I originated it. He stopped walking, finally looked at me. You should be careful how you frame things. 3 hours later, Human Resources closed the door behind me. Your position has been eliminated. Effective immediately. The folder slid across the table. Eliminated, I repeated. She nodded. No explanation, no apology. I packed my desk while people pretended not to notice. When I told 2 coworkers what happened, one let out a short laugh. 2%, he said, on a $500 million deal. Another shook his head. Grant wouldn't risk that. They believed the version that made them comfortable. I walked out carrying a cardboard box and the sudden clarity that my name had already been erased once that day. That night, I logged into the one system they forgot to lock me out of. What hurts more, losing your job or watching people enjoy your fall? I cleared my desk in silence. A box. A notebook. The framed photo I kept turned face down. Someone hovered near the doorway, pretending to check messages. Hey, Mark murmured, not meeting my eyes. Rough day. Grant took the commission, I replied. 2%. It was in my plan. Mark's mouth twitched. That's not how it works. It is. I said, you've seen the structure. He glanced toward the hall, then back at me. You should be careful saying that out loud. At the elevator, Denise folded her arms. People are talking about that you're upset and exaggerating. A pause. They think you're spiraling. I set the box down. I originated the deal. She exhaled. Marin. Grant's been telling everyone he had to step in. Clean things up. Clean what up? She lowered her voice. Your process. In the lobby. 2 associates stood near the coffee station. One laughed, not quietly. 2% on $500 million, he said. That's not real money. The other shrugged. She wants it to be. I stepped closer. It's in the plan. Signed. They went still. One raised his hands. Look, we're just saying what we heard. From who A beat? No answer. My phone buzzed. A message from an old client contact flashed and vanished retracted. Then another from a teammate, you should stop posting. It's not helping. I haven't posted anything, I said, more to myself than to them. By the time I reached the street, the version of events had already settled. Grant had rescued a deal. I had lost focus. The commission had never existed. The repetition hardened it into fact. Back at my apartment, I opened my laptop. An internal chat thread I still had access to refreshed. A new line appeared. Leadership handled the transition professionally. I closed the window and opened another. The system loaded slowly, then welcomed me by name. They had rewritten the story. They hadn't erased the record. Why would a company erase the person who built the deal from the ground up? I didn't invent my role after the fact. It was written into my offer letter. Senior Deal Origination Director. Grant had said during my hiring meeting 2 years earlier. You find it. You shape it. You carry it across the line. I had smiled then. And when it closes, he slid the commission plan across the table. 2% of total contract value. That's standard for origination. I remembered that sentence clearly, because I asked him to repeat it. The deal didn't appear overnight. It started with a cold introduction and a half-hour call no one else wanted to take. Weeks of follow-ups. Drafts sent back with red lines so dense they looked personal. Late nights answering questions that arrived after midnight. At one point, the client's counsel pushed back on a clause that would have killed the entire agreement. This doesn't work, she said over the phone. We walk if this stays. I rewrote it myself. Sent the revision before sunrise. You saved us. The client's director told me later, "We're moving forward." Every email went through me. Every revision came back to me. When Grant joined the calls near the end, he mostly listened. "Just keep us aligned," he said once. "You've got it." I opened my contract now, scrolling past the language I knew by heart: compensation, incentive structure, origination fee, 2% of gross contract value upon execution. Signed by me, signed by him. I forwarded the clause to the company's general inbox. No commentary, just the document. The response came from legal 2 hours later. "We're reviewing the matter," it read. "Please refrain from further contact with internal stakeholders," I replied once. "This is my role as defined by contract." The answer didn't come. They hadn't erased me because the contract was unclear. They erased me because it wasn't. How do you steal a deal without touching a single dollar? I opened the system timeline and followed the trail backward. The ownership field changed first, not days before the signing, not after. The morning of the closing call, 9:14 in the morning. The name flipped from mine to his. I stared at the entry, time-stamped, logged, permanent. An hour later, my access disappeared. I called AITA. "I'm locked out of the infrastructure account." A pause. Keys clicking. "Your permissions were updated." By who? Another pause. "Management?" By noon. Legal sent the final draft under Grant's name. I called the associate I had worked with for months. "Why am I not on the document?" Her voice dropped. "I was told to issue it that way." "Told by who?" She hesitated. "Grant said he'd taken over." I leaned back and closed my eyes. The steps were clean, almost elegant. Change the system, remove the witness, issue the paperwork, then cut the person who could object. The firing made sense now. Human resources hadn't moved fast because of performance. They moved fast because timing mattered. I called Grant once, just once. "You locked me out before the deal closed." He didn't deny it. "That was an operational decision. You reassigned ownership, leadership prerogative. You issued documents under your name. That's how accountability works." And the termination A-beat. Controlled. The role evolved. I laughed. "It surprised both of us. So you didn't take the money," I said. "You removed the person entitled to it." His voice cooled. "Be careful, Marin, with confusing process for misconduct." I ended the call. The record sat open in front of me, every change, every click, every name. He had relied on authority, not erasure, on silence, not consent. I exported the audit log and saved it twice. Power had moved quickly. The system had moved faster. What if the one thing they couldn't erase was already watching them? The audit panel loaded without ceremony. No warning, no judgment, just a list, deal ownership. The first line read. I scrolled. My name. Then a second entry beneath it, Grant's. Time stamped 9:14 in the morning, the same morning I lost access. I called Leo from compliance. We had crossed paths during a review years earlier. "I need confirmation on an audit trail," I told him. A pause. "Which system?" "The customer relationship platform. Infrastructure pipeline." Another pause. Longer. "Those logs don't change." "I know." He didn't ask why. "Send the record identifier." Minutes later, my phone vibrated. "Confirmed," he said. "Original owner logged as you. Change executed by executive credentials. Permanent, yes." I opened my employment file next. Compensation, incentives. I hadn't looked at it since the day I signed. The commission plan sat where it always had. Plain language. Origination fee payable upon execution. 2% of gross contract value. Grant's signature rested at the bottom. Inked. Dated. I forwarded the page to legal again, this time, copied to myself. The reply came from a different address. "We acknowledge receipt," it read. "Please direct further communication through counsel." My phone rang before I could close the message. "You should stop," Grant said. "I'm reviewing records," I replied. "You're creating problems." I didn't change the system. Silence. Then, quieter. "This isn't how things work." "I think it is." I said, "It's just not how you expected." I saved the audit file, then the commission plan, then the email thread acknowledging receipt. 3 separate folders. 2 backups. People could deny conversations. They could revise stories. They could laugh. The system didn't care who was comfortable. It recorded what happened. What changes when the client asked the wrong question? The message arrived just after noon. No subject line, just a name I knew. Marin, why did you disappear from our deal? We were told leadership reassigned it. That didn't make sense to us. I stared at the screen. Then I typed back exactly one sentence. I wasn't reassigned. The reply came fast. Then why was Grant suddenly listed as owner? You were the one negotiating with us. I forwarded the thread to legal. No commentary, no interpretation. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. A blocked number. Who are you talking to? Grant asked. I answered a question. You're creating exposure. I'm responding to the client. They don't need to hear your version. My version is documented. He hung up. An hour later, a new email appeared in my inbox. Not addressed to me. Forwarded by someone who didn't sign their name. From Grant Kessler to Finance Subject Commission Review. Marin's 2% is too high. We will restructure after closing. Process the change once documents are issued. The date sat above it. 3 days before the signing. 2 days before my access was cut. 1 day before Human Resources called me in, I called Leo again. That email. I said, can you verify sender and timestamp a pause? Yes. And it's authentic. I forwarded it to legal, then to myself, then to my attorney. The response this time wasn't silence. We are willing to discuss resolution. Legal wrote, privately. Grant called again, voice tight. This didn't have to escalate. It didn't, I said. You escalated it. You're making this personal. You made it contractual. He exhaled, slow. There are ways to end this. I'm listening, quietly. I closed the email window and saved the attachment. Intent wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was written, dated, signed by behavior. They could still refuse to settle. They couldn't pretend they didn't know why. What would you give up to make this all disappear? The offer arrived through my attorney, typed in careful language that pretended to be neutral. The company is prepared to resolve this matter privately. She read aloud, a one-time payment, no admission of wrongdoing. And I asked. She paused. There's a condition. She turned the page and slid it toward me. One paragraph was highlighted. They want a statement, she said. You would acknowledge that the commission dispute arose from a misunderstanding of your role. A misunderstanding, I repeated. They want it signed, dated, confidential. I pictured the email thread, the audit log, the message to finance about restructuring my 2%. All of it reduced to a polite lie. How much, I asked. She named the number. It was large enough to make the room go quiet. It's more than most cases like this, she added. They're nervous. I leaned back. They're not paying for peace. She nodded slowly. They're paying for silence. That afternoon, Grant called one last time. No edge now, just persuasion. You get money, he said. You move on. Everyone saves face. Whose face, I asked. A pause. Yours. They want me to say I imagined it. I said. They want me to help them erase me. You're tired, he replied. This has dragged on. It hasn't dragged, I said. It's been resisted. He lowered his voice. Think about what you lose if this goes public. I already lost my job, I said. I already lost my reputation. What you're offering doesn't give that back. Another pause. Longer this time. So that's your answer. Yes, I signed nothing. I rewrote nothing. I corrected nothing. When the call ended, my attorney closed her folder. If we refuse, she said, this goes to court. I nodded. Then it goes to court. The money would have closed the noise. Silence would have finished the erasure. I chose the record. What does justice sound like when no one can argue anymore? The judge looked down at the file. Counsel, proceed. Grant's attorney stood first, confident, relaxed. This case is built on assumption. He said, Ms. Abbott. Callaway was not the owner of the transaction at closing. Leadership reassigned it. No commission was due. Grant didn't look at me. He watched the bench. My attorney rose. We'll start with the system record. She turned to the screen. This is the customer relationship platform used by the company. It logs ownership changes automatically. The defense shifted in their seats. Please note the time. My attorney continued. 9:14 in the morning. Deal ownership changed from Marin Callaway to Grant Kessler. The closing call began at 10. Grant leaned toward his attorney, whispered. Who executed the change? The judge asked. My attorney didn't answer. She clicked again. Executive credentials, Mr. Kessler's. The defense stood. Objection overruled. The judge said, Continue. Next came the contract. This is the commission plan signed at hire. My attorney said origination fee of 2% upon execution. Signed by both parties. Grant's signature sat at the bottom. Familiar, undeniable. The judge looked up. Mr. Kessler, do you dispute this signature? No, he said, flat. My attorney nodded and opened the final exhibit. This email was sent 3 days before closing. She read it aloud. Marin's 2% is too high. We will restructure after closing. Process the change once documents are issued. Grant's attorney stood again. That email reflects internal discussion, not intent. The judge leaned forward. It reflects timing. The room settled into a stillness that felt heavy, not tense, finished. Miss Calloway, the judge said, turning to me. Were you informed of this restructuring before your access was revoked? No. Were you terminated before or after the contract executed before? The judge closed the file. That will be all. No gavel, no raised voices. Just the sound of a decision being written into the record. What does accountability look like when no one applauds? The ruling arrived in an email from my attorney. No ceremony, no flourish. The court finds in your favor, she said when she called. The company is ordered to pay the full commission and all associated legal costs. How much, I asked. She read it out slowly, the way people do when they want the number to land. 2% of the executed contract value. $500 million. $10 million, plus fees. I closed my eyes. Not relief, not joy, just the end of pressure. They have 30 days, she added. There's more. What kind of more? An internal investigation has already begun. I heard about that part from someone else. Denise called that evening. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. They put Grant on leave, she said, effective immediately. For how long? No one knows. A pause. They're reviewing everything he touched. Another pause. I'm sorry. I let the silence sit between us. For what? For believing them, she said. For laughing. I didn't correct her. I didn't comfort her either. The next morning, Grant emailed me. Not directly. Copied through legal. This outcome was unexpected. It read, I regret how this escalated. I read it twice, then replied with one sentence. The record reflects what happened. There was no response. A week later, the company issued a short internal notice. Leadership change, no explanation, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Just a name removed from a role. I met my attorney once more to sign final documents. You know, she said, sliding the papers over, most people would have taken the settlement. I know. You didn't make this easy. I didn't make it invisible. I said. She smiled once. Professional, that's rare. When the funds cleared, nothing in my life visibly changed. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post. I didn't tell anyone who hadn't already known. What changed was quieter. My name appeared correctly in the public filing. My role was documented. The sequence of events sat in black text, time-stamped, unarguable. No one clapped. No one called it justice. But when people spoke about the deal after that, they stopped saying Grant's name. They used mine. What do you keep when everything else is stripped away? I did not go back to the building. No farewell walk, no victory lap. The badge had already been deactivated, and I had no interest in borrowing their air again. A recruiter called 2 days after the funds cleared. They want to meet, she said. Your name came up. Tell them I'm unavailable, I replied. She hesitated. Permanently. For now. I met my attorney one last time to finalize the closeout. She slid the stamped order across the table, the ink still sharp. You did this the hard way, she said. I did it the only way that left a record. She nodded. That record will outlive all of them. At home. I drafted one final email. No subject line. No explanation. I addressed it to the team list I had once managed. For those who asked what happened, the court record is public. It reflects my role in the transaction and the sequence of events. I'm sharing it here so the facts don't need retelling. I attached the link. I read it once, then I sent it. Responses came in quietly. A few apologies. A few acknowledgements. Most said nothing at all. Silence can be honest when people finally know where they stand. Grant never wrote again. Weeks passed. The noise moved on to something else. The way it always does. New deals. New leaders. New stories told with confidence. Mine didn't need repeating. The truth was filed, time-stamped, and archived. It lived where titles couldn't reach and authority couldn't edit. Anyone could find it. No one could undo it. I learned something in the process that had nothing to do with contracts or courts. Power relies on memory being short. It assumes exhaustion will do its work. It waits for people to trade accuracy for peace. I did not win because I was louder or smarter or more ruthless. I won because I refused to help them forget. The life lesson I carry forward is simple and expensive. When your work is real, protect the proof of it. When your name is taken, put it back where it belongs. And when silence is offered as a reward, remember that dignity is not something you can buy back once you sell it. Some things can be reassigned. Some things can be delayed. The truth, once written, stays. The story you are about to hear is a fictional narrative created by the writing team at Revenge AITA. While inspired by real workplace power dynamics and emotional truths many professionals face, all characters, companies, and events are works of fiction. This story explores accountability, dignity, and the consequences of underestimating the wrong person. The sentence that ended my career didn't come with raised voices or anger. It arrived calmly, professionally, like a conclusion everyone else in the room had already accepted. His MBA is worth more than your 15 years of experience. That's it. Evan Caldwell didn't look at me when the words landed. His attention stayed on the tablet in front of him, thumb scrolling as if my future were just another line item. I sat there for a beat, letting the weight of it settle. So that's the explanation, I said quietly. He nodded once. It's company direction. We're aligning compensation with strategic value. Strategic, I repeated. And my role doesn't qualify a pause, not hesitation calculation. You maintain systems, he replied. Important work, but not leadership level. I leaned forward. You mean the systems that move client data every minute of the day? The ones that trigger compliance alerts if anything goes wrong? His jaw tightened. Those responsibilities don't require an MBA. That was the moment. Not the insult, but the certainty behind it. The confidence of someone who had never needed to understand the consequences of being wrong. I reached into my bag. The envelope made a soft sound against the table when I set it down. Evan's eyes finally lifted. What's that supposed to be, closure? He opened it, scanned the page, then looked up again. You're resigning. Yes. This doesn't have to happen today. It already did. Silence stretched between us. The kind that usually meant someone was about to negotiate. I didn't. He tried once more. You're walking away over one compensation decision. I stood, straightening my jacket. I'm walking away because this decision tells me exactly how you measure value. That's a mistake. No, I said. It's clarity. I didn't wait for a response. There was nothing left to hear. The story you're about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revenge AITA. While the events and characters are imagined, each story explores a different truth about power, respect, and consequence. No two stories share the same lesson, and no ending repeats another. In the hallway, my badge still worked. For now, I noticed that before I noticed anything else. Not panic, not regret. Just the strange calm that comes when you finally stop pretending not to understand what's been in front of you all along. That was the moment everything began to move, without me there to hold it together. How do you become invisible in the company you keep alive? The first time they called me outside normal hours, it was close to midnight. A junior engineer's voice came through my phone, tight and rushed. The ingestion jobs aren't clearing. Everything's backing up. Which node? I asked. A pause. Papers shuffling. The main one, I think. I stayed on the line while pulling on a jacket, walking him through checks he didn't know existed. By the time the sun came up, the system was stable again. No announcement, no follow-up meeting. Just a short message from his manager later that day. Thanks for jumping in. That became the pattern. During the regulatory audit 2 years later, a compliance officer leaned across a conference table and asked, "Who signed off on the data retention logic?" Several heads turned in my direction at once. I didn't raise my hand. I didn't need to. Everyone already knew. After the auditors left, Evan's predecessor stopped by my desk. "You saved us back there," he said. "That could have been ugly." "It was ugly," I replied, just quietly. He laughed. "Uncomfortable. You know what I mean." I did. They always did. When systems failed. My phone rang. When vendors change requirements without notice, someone forwarded me an email with one line highlighted and no explanation. When a rushed deployment corrupted records, the team waited for me to say where to look. In meetings, though, my role shrank. We'll let Marin handle the maintenance details. Maintenance. As if the architecture holding everything together were just a background hum. Once, during a planning session, I interrupted to flag a dependency risk. Evan waved a hand. We'll circle back. This meeting is about strategy. The room moved on without me. Later that night, the same feature triggered an alert. Evan's name showed up on my screen. Can you take a look, he asked. Something's off. I already told you what was off, I replied. Silence. Then, softer. Just fix it. I did. Every time. They trusted me with everything that mattered and nothing that counted. No title change, no recognition. Just the quiet expectation that I would be there when things broke and invisible the rest of the time. By the time I sat in that salary meeting, listening to my value being reduced to a line on a tablet, the erasure hadn't just happened in one sentence. It had been happening for years. What if the truth reached you before the insult did? The email arrived on a Tuesday afternoon with no subject line. A finance analyst named Brooke forwarded it to the wrong list, then tried to recall it a minute later. Too late. Please delete the previous attachment. The follow-up read, I didn't. The file opened cleanly. Names down the left, roles beside them. Columns of numbers I recognized instantly. Compensation, bonuses, adjustments. I scrolled once, then again. A new hire from the leadership program, 3 months and earning more than I had after 15 years. Another line confirmed it, and another. The approvals column sat at the far right. Evan Caldwell. I leaned back, letting the room quiet around me. No pulse spike. No heat in my face. Just a steady narrowing, like a lens clicking into focus. Brooke messaged again. Please tell me you didn't open it. I did. I typed back. A pause. I'm so sorry, I know. I replied. And I meant it. I didn't confront Evan. I didn't book a meeting. I didn't forward the file to anyone else. I closed it and went back to work. That evening, a teammate stopped by my desk. You heading out soon? In a bit. You're always the last one, he said, half smiling. Not always. I answered. Over the next few days, I did the ordinary things. I cleaned my directories. I finalized notes I'd been carrying in my head. I labeled files with names anyone could understand. At the printer. I paused as a page slid out. My resignation letter, 1 page, direct, dated, but missing the time. A manager passed behind me. Everything okay? Fine, I said. He nodded and moved on. When the salary meeting appeared on my calendar the following week, I accepted it without comment. I didn't rehearse. I didn't plan a speech. I already knew the number. I already knew the explanation. That meeting wasn't a negotiation waiting to happen. It was a formality, a confirmation. The decision had been made weeks earlier, in a spreadsheet I was never meant to see. What does power feel like when you stop asking to be seen? The badge reader blinked red the first time I tried it. I held the card there a second longer, then pulled it back. Tried again. Same result. A security guard looked up from his desk. Name Marin Caldwell. He checked his screen. Access was disabled. That was fast, I said. He shrugged. Happens. Inside the open office, keyboards kept clicking. Conversations continued at the same low volume. People who had called me at all hours suddenly found reasons to study their monitors. A few looked up, then looked away. I walked past my team. Ahmed Patel, a senior engineer I'd worked with for years, stood as I passed. He didn't say anything. He just gave a small nod. Not sympathy, not apology. Recognition. I stopped by my desk. No one followed. No one asked what happened. A manager from the adjacent group leaned over the partition. Everything okay, I'm done, I said. He blinked. Already, yes. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Well, good luck. I packed slowly. A notebook. A mug someone once gave me as a joke. My phone buzzed once on the desk, then went dark as the company profile dropped off it. At the elevator, Evan's assistant stepped out, froze when she saw me, then forced a smile. Take care, she said. I replied. The ride down was quiet. No music, no announcements, just the soft stop at each floor. At the lobby desk, I placed my badge in the tray. Leaving for the day, the receptionist asked, permanently. She hesitated, then nodded. All right, outside. The air felt unchanged. I unlocked my car and sat for a moment without starting the engine. No shaking hands, no racing thoughts, just a stillness I hadn't felt in years. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I didn't look. For the first time, I wasn't on call. Can a company survive a problem it doesn't understand? At 3:17 in the afternoon, my phone lit up for the first time since I left the building. A text from Ahmed Patel. You're probably seeing this already. I didn't need to. Another vibration followed, then another. Missed calls stacked up from numbers I recognized. Operations, platform reliability, someone from finance who had never contacted me directly before. Ahmed called again. I answered this time. It started with ingestion. He said without preamble. Queue depth spiked. Alerts everywhere. Who's on it? I asked. A short laugh. Everyone in the background. I could hear overlapping voices. Just restart it. Evan's voice cut through, sharp and impatient. Ahmed lowered his volume. He keeps saying that. Restart what I asked. That's the problem. I pictured the conference room without trying. Whiteboard markers uncapped. Dashboards flashing colors no one fully understood. Which pipeline? Someone asked in the background. The main one. Evan replied. The core process. That's not a thing. Another engineer said. There are 6 dependencies. Silence followed. Then Evan again, tighter this time. Why is this so complicated? Ahmed spoke into the phone. We flagged this last quarter. The vendor changed the handoff logic. Marin documented it. A pause. Papers shifting. Where is Marin? Someone asked. No one answered. Another alert chimed through the speaker. Ahmed swore under his breath. Secondary systems are backing up now. Evan cut in, voice rising. We need a timeline. We need understanding, Helen Park said. She was new, brought in as a technical lead a few months earlier, and we don't have it. My name came up again, not as a solution, as an absence. Ahmed exhaled slowly. They're asking if you can consult. Just for tonight. I'm not available. I said, I figured. He hesitated. They didn't realize. Not really, they did. I replied. They just didn't think it would matter. When the call ended, I set the phone down and sat back. Somewhere across town. Alarms kept firing. Meetings kept escalating. Confident words kept filling the space where understanding used to be. And for the first time, the system was running without me there to catch it. What does it mean when the people who dismissed you suddenly need you? The first voicemail came from HR. A careful voice, measured and polite. Marin, this is Lena from People Operations. We're hoping to discuss a temporary arrangement to help stabilize things. Please call me back. I didn't. The second came from IT leadership. No greeting this time. We're in active incident response. We could really use your guidance. My phone buzzed again before the message finished saving. The caller ID showed the CFO's office. I let it ring. A minute later, another voicemail replaced the silence. This one skipped pleasantries entirely. Marin, this is Victor Hale. We need you. Tonight. Name your rate. I listened to that one twice. Not because I was tempted, but because the shift was impossible to miss. Hours earlier, my value had been reduced to credentials I didn't have. Now it was being recalculated in real time. A text followed from an unknown number. Emergency consulting. Short term. We can make this work. I set the phone face down on the table. When I stayed late, it cost weekends. When I answered after midnight, it cost sleep. When I took responsibility, it cost visibility. Each time I made things easier for them, it made me easier to ignore. Another call, same number as before. I picked up, then hung up before it connected. The phone buzzed again, this time from Ahmed. They're offering real money now, he said when I answered. They're panicking, I know. You could fix this. I already did, I replied. They just didn't notice. He went quiet. They're asking what it would take. I looked at the wall, at nothing in particular. It already took everything I was willing to give. When the call ended, the room settled back into stillness. Messages kept arriving. Promises sharpened. Titles softened. Urgency crept into every word they'd never used before. I didn't respond. Control didn't come from raising my voice or making demands. It came from choosing when not to speak and letting them feel the weight of that choice. What would you say if the most powerful person in your career showed up unannounced? The knock came just after dusk. Firm, careful, not the sound of someone in a hurry. When I opened the door, Thomas Caldwell stood on the step alone, keys still in his hand. No driver, no assistant. The man who signed off on every major decision at the company looked smaller without a conference table between us. "I didn't call," he said. "I thought it would be better to come myself." I stepped aside. He hesitated, then entered, stopping just inside as if unsure where to put his weight. "I didn't approve that pay decision," he began, not knowingly. I waited. He exhaled. "Evan presented it as alignment, market correction. He told me you were comfortable with the adjustment." "That's not what happened," I said. "I know." His voice tightened. "I know now." He rubbed a hand over his face. "The approvals went through his office. He controlled the data, the narrative, so you trusted him." I replied. "I trusted the system," he said, then corrected himself. "I trusted my son." Silence settled. "He didn't fill it. They're telling me the core pipeline is unstable," he continued. "That it was always fragile." "It wasn't fragile," I said. "It was maintained." He nodded slowly, as if each word carried weight. "They asked if you'd come back, even temporarily." "I won't." "I'm not here to negotiate," he said quickly. "I'm here to understand what I missed." I met his eyes. "You missed what happens when experience gets relabeled as overhead." His shoulders dropped a fraction. "I failed you. You failed the company," I replied. "I just happened to be standing there when it broke." He swallowed. "What do you want?" I didn't answer right away. Not because I needed time, but because this wasn't about what I wanted. "This isn't something you fix with an offer," I said. "It's something you fix by changing who gets to decide value." He nodded once. "Then tell me what that looks like." I spoke carefully. He listened without interrupting. When he left, he didn't ask me to reconsider. He didn't make promises he couldn't keep. He just paused at the door. "I should have known who we were leaning on," he said. I closed the door behind him and stood there for a moment, steady and quiet, knowing the reckoning had already begun. What if justice isn't revenge, but restructuring the damage? Thomas Caldwell called the next morning, not from his office, not from his assistant's line. "I spoke to the board," he said. "They want to know what it would take to bring you back." "I'm not coming back," I replied. A pause, papers shifting on his end. Even short-term consulting, no. He didn't push. "Then tell me what you want." I took a breath. "This isn't about what I want. It's about what has to change." "I'm listening." "First," I said, "there needs to be an independent compensation audit, not internal, not handled by the same people who approved the gap. That can be done. Second, your son cannot have authority over compensation, technical direction, or personnel decisions. Effective immediately." The silence that followed was heavier this time. "That's significant," he said. "It's necessary." Another pause. "All right." Third, I continued. "Transparency, salary bands, promotion criteria. No more decisions made behind closed doors and explained afterward as policy." He exhaled slowly. "You're asking us to rebuild how we operate. I'm telling you why it broke. I need to be clear," he said. "If I agree to this, there's no guarantee you'll reconsider. I'm certain I won't." I replied. He didn't argue. "Then why are you offering this at all?" "Because the next person in my role shouldn't have to leave for you to notice." The line stayed quiet for several seconds. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, less defensive, more resolved. "The board won't like it. They don't have to," I said. "They just have to live with the alternative." "I'll make it happen," he said finally. "Not because it's right, because we don't survive if we don't." "That's the difference," I replied. "Now you understand the cost." He thanked me. Not formally, not carefully, just once, plainly. When the call ended, I set the phone down and felt something settle into place. Not satisfaction, not relief, agency. The kind that comes from choosing structure over spite and walking away without needing to watch who falls next, who pays when leadership learns too late. The update came from Ahmed first. He didn't bother easing into it. "They removed Evan," he said, "effective immediately." I leaned against the counter, listening. "Board decision?" I asked. "Unanimous," he replied. "They said concentration of authority without accountability put the company at risk." And now, a breath on the line. Now everyone's being asked questions they don't like. He told me about the emergency board sessions that stretched late into the night, about the external consultants brought in to review decisions that had once been waved through with confidence, about project timelines quietly pushed back because no one wanted to sign off on systems they didn't understand. Our biggest client paused renewals, he added. They want assurances. I'm not surprised, I said. A few days later, Thomas Caldwell emailed, no subject line, just a short message. We're implementing the audit this week. Evan is no longer involved in operations. I wanted you to hear it directly. I read it once and closed the laptop. My first day at the new company didn't come with fanfare. A small conference room, 3 engineers, a manager who started the meeting by asking, "What do you need from us to do your best work?" I answered without thinking. "Clarity," he nodded. "That's reasonable." Later, while reviewing architecture plans, one of the engineers looked over and said, "I've read your work. We're glad you're here. No qualifiers, no explanations." That evening, Ahmed called again. "They're still talking about you," he said, not in a good way. More like regret. "I'm not interested in being a lesson," I replied. When the call ended, I sat quietly for a moment. The noise from the old place felt distant now, like something happening in another life. I didn't feel triumphant. There was no rush of satisfaction, just a steady sense of space, like setting down a weight you didn't realize you'd been carrying until it was gone. Whatever they were losing now, they'd already decided it was expendable. I just stopped absorbing the cost. What if the strongest ending is choosing a future that never needed an apology? My new manager, Claire Nolan, didn't start our first one-on-one with praise. She set her notebook down and said, "Tell me what you want to build," I told her, not defensively, not carefully, just clearly. She listened, then nodded. "Good, we'll support that." That was it. No test, no reminder of hierarchy, no subtle warning about staying in my lane. A week later, during a review session, one of the engineers pushed back on a decision I made. He laid out his concern, waited, then added, "If you disagree, say so." "I want to understand." I explained my reasoning. He considered it, then said, "That makes sense. Let's do it your way." I realized something then. Respect didn't arrive here as a reward. It was built into the room. Updates from my former company drifted in occasionally. A message forwarded by Ahmed. A brief note from Thomas Caldwell confirming the audit had concluded. The company survived, as large companies often do. Systems stabilized. Processes were rewritten. Titles shifted. The cost remained, though lost time, broken trust, decisions that could not be undone. One afternoon, my phone buzzed with a final message from Thomas. We corrected the structure. It read, "I wish we had done it sooner." I didn't reply. At my desk, a junior engineer hesitated before speaking. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead. How did you know when to leave?" I met his eyes. I didn't wait to be convinced I was wrong. I left when staying required me to agree that I was. He nodded slowly. When I shut down my computer that evening, there was no weight in my shoulders, no alert waiting to pull me back. Just the quiet satisfaction of work done honestly, in a place that understood its value. Here's the lesson I carried forward and now pass on when an organization teaches you what it truly values. Believe it the first time. If that value does not include you, the bravest move is not to argue harder, it is to walk toward a future that does.